Welcome to From Our Generation, where we uncover the ideas and events that shape the world we live in today. I'm Crom Carmichael.
And I'm Mike Hassel.
Together we'll explore the past to better understand the present, because history isn't just about what happened, it's about how you think about it. All right, well, Michael, here we are. It is now August 15th, 2025.
Good morning.
And good morning. And we're about to do From Our Generation. And what we're going to be talking about today, and you're going to lead this because you've done a lot of research, great research, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
On gerrymandering, immigration, and predicting the next census and what that means. And then we're going to be talking about some of the things about the big, beautiful bill and what it might mean over the next 15 months for the economy and therefore the pocketbook of the voters.
Yes.
And then the last thing we're going to touch on is what's going on in Washington, D.C., and what it looks like will be put before Congress, and what that might mean. So let's begin with gerrymandering, immigration, and then the next census. So please take it away.
So this is a hot topic because Texas is threatening to recount and redraw their district lines, and they would get 5 more seats out of their delegation to the U.S. House of Representatives. So I think now they have 38 seats. They are divided 25 Republican and 13 Democrat. Mm-hmm. That would make it 30 Republican and 8 Democrat. That's a pretty significant swing at the U.S. House of Representatives where you have like 2 votes separating the parties.
4.
4? 4,
right. And they can lose if they lose 4. If Republicans right now lose 4 votes going to the who vote with the Democrat, they lose a I guess so. They may have it's either 3 or 4 depending on how you count it.
So with the scale so evenly balanced
yes.
in the current constitution of the House, this would make a big difference. So
yes,
California is threatening to retaliate by redrawing their own. Illinois said they might, and so you may have a gerrymander war.
Yes.
Right? So it's a very current topic, but it's also an old topic. It's more than 200 years old. So let's start with that. Do you know what gerrymander means?
I do not.
So this was started by the governor of Massachusetts, Elbridge Gerry, in 1812. And for partisan reasons, he redrew a congressional district, just exactly what's happening right now, not for racial reasons. Okay, that's worth saying. The Supreme Court has outlawed gerrymandering for racial purposes. Okay, but they've said hands off for political gerrymandering. The Constitution allocates this to the states. It's a political matter, not a judicial matter. Have at it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're having at it.
Yep.
But Elbridge Gerry did this in 1812. And some of the observers in the newspapers, I guess, said this district looks like a salamander, complete with feet and a tail and a head. And so this whole process came to be known as a gerrymander.
That's great.
Yeah, and so
that's very cool.
Look at the shape of some of these districts. You know, they look like snakes sometimes. They're just really absurd.
Yes.
But they are legal. Okay, so the question comes then, this tit for tat, Texas does something, California does something. Where does this go? How much room is there for other states to gerrymander further than they have? Yeah,
now let me first of all say one thing here, and that is when you look at California today and you look at Texas today, there's a lot more opportunity to gerrymander in Texas than there is in California because California has already gerrymandered in the past.
Yeah.
In the past.
As we'll see, almost every state has gerrymandered pretty seriously.
Yes.
Some not to the extent of others. Texas not quite as much as others.
Right.
In some cases, there are 0.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, 9-0, I think.
Yeah, and it was funny because the governor of Massachusetts threatened to gerrymander, and then it was pointed out to her that she had no Republican seats that she could take away. Embarrassed her a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Tennessee is almost the same in the other direction. We have 9 seats also, and 8 are Republican, 1 is Democrat.
Right.
So I made a chart. I basically drew a spreadsheet. I went through every state, and I looked at the congressional delegation and its division between Republicans and Democrats, and I compared that to the vote total that Trump got in the last election.
Yeah.
That's the general index of Republican versus Democratic sentiment.
Yeah, now for those who are only listening to this podcast, they can go to From Our Generation and click a link and see the work that you did to color code all the states that shows what we are now talking about.
Yes.
So if you're looking at it, what you're going to be referring to is on the screen.
Yes.
People can see it.
Okay.
If they're only listening, it'll be very helpful for them to go to From Our Generation and pull this up because this is very valuable.
So just by the way, I am very new to AI. I have not used it a lot, but I used ChatGPT to build this.
Okay.
Basically, I said in column 1, list all the states. In column 2, list all the number of House seats in that state.
Okay.
I just went through step by step. The yellow in this diagram is where ChatGPT got it wrong.
Okay.
Because I had to go and look up some of these Trump percent votes, and they actually picked up the other party's vote in about half of these cases.
Now, are some of these wrong, or
they're
did you
wrong?
correct
They're right
them?
now.
They're correct.
They're correct now,
Okay.
but 3 of them stood out. If you remember the early version,
Yes.
they said that just doesn't look right.
Right.
They weren't right, and I checked all of them, and about half of them were wrong.
Wow.
So that's what the yellow means. Okay.
Right. Also, that's a lesson in using ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It can be very helpful, but don't
It was enormously helpful.
don't rely completely on.
There's
it.
8 or 9 columns here times 50.
Yeah.
Transferring all of those data values is just tedious.
Yes.
So anyway, if you look at every state, then the ones that are in reddish pink have already been gerrymandered in favor of Republicans.
Okay.
The ones that are in bluish, blue-gray have been gerrymandered in favor of Democrats. And it turns out that this is reasonably balanced. We have 215 Republican reps, according to this, and their pro rata percentage of the vote, if you applied Trump's vote, would be 217.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty close.
Right.
But there's some room for more gerrymandering.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, places like Michigan has 13 seats. It's 7 Republican, 6 Democrat. Whoever's in charge there.
But you have to control both houses, both the House and the Senate and the governor's office.
Yes.
And I don't think the Democrats.
I don't think they do.
I don't think they do. So in this election cycle, Michigan can do nothing. That's why Gretchen Whitmer hadn't said anything.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can look in each state, and those kind of considerations determine whether they really are or could do something.
Right.
My point is, it's a relatively balanced congressional delegation at this point. Pennsylvania is similar. It's 10-7 Republican. Okay. It's probably similar circumstances in the way their state government is set up. Wisconsin is 6-2 in favor of Republicans. That surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, that is.
But the point is, both sides have gerrymandered a lot.
Right.
There's a little bit left, but there's not much more squeeze in this.
Well, now, to your point, though, if Pennsylvania were to have a Democrat governor, House, and Senate, which they don't have all 3 right now.
Yes.
They're missing at least one of the House or the Senate. I don't know which one. They could flip that the other way easily. The Democrats could flip that the other way because it's a 50-50 state. And so Republicans have it 10-7. Democrats could easily make it 10-7 in a 50-50 state. And so that's interesting. Wisconsin is also the same thing if they had them, but they don't.
Yes.
So they can't do anything in this cycle. So in this cycle, there are only 2 Democrats. I'm going to make a statement. You correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
There are only 2 states that can actually do something. California claims that it can do something, although it has a constitutional requirement to only gerrymander to redistrict every 10 years.
I think that's true.
Yeah, I mean that's in their state constitution.
If it is, they cannot do this.
Well, they got to figure out how to overcome that.
Yeah.
And then the other one is New York. Hochul claims she can do it, although she tried to do it, and her own state Supreme Court said that what she was doing was for racial reasons, and you couldn't do that. So she'd have to figure out another way. So what you have now is, to me, as I look at your data here, there are 2 states where Republicans could gerrymander significantly.
Yes.
One is Texas.
Yes.
And the other's Florida.
Yes.
And then Democrats have 2 states where they could gerrymander some because they've already gerrymandered a lot, and that is California and New York.
Yes.
However, both of those, when you gerrymander, I'm going to make a statement here. When you gerrymander, in order to get more seats for your party, you have to weaken you have to make some of your own party members more vulnerable.
Because you're spreading around the opposition's votes, and just just not quite enough to get elected.
Right.
And if that balance were to change a little bit, then you've got what seem to be safe seats now lost.
Yes. And we're going to get into what that means on two other sections of this podcast, and that is illegal immigration counting and then reapportionment in 2030.
Yes.
Of what that might mean. So please, let's go ahead. So right now, what you have is the Texas Senate has passed the redistricting. It has passed that. There's a special session in the House. Democrats have fled the state. Abbott has said that if they don't come back, he's going to call another special session that'll start the very next day.
And by the way, there's a century-old history of doing this. This is one of the ways they try to stop legislation they don't want.
And then, but they always cave and come back.
Well, they have to come back. I mean, they can't.
Well, and the other thing that Texas is doing is, I think they're putting they're making sure that anybody who is funding this pays a legal price, and that might even, I don't know if this is true, but it might even include if you're an employer and you are paying an employee who has fled the state and is not working, and you're paying them even though they're out of the state, that might be illegal for you to be paying an employee.
Yeah, there's all sorts of little semantics that fit around this, and when we say they have to come back, they may not come back for a long time. That's why he would call another session.
He says, I'll keep calling them until they return.
Right. So the big point I wanted to make about this is that the Constitution provides that these are state processes.
Yes.
This is not controlled by the federal government. And there was a big reason for doing that, which is to avoid tyranny. Okay, by having a distributed electoral system with each state having its own rules and its own processes, it's very hard to take over. And you can see, as partisan as we are now, the House of Representatives is pretty balanced, representing both sides. And our federal elections on the popular vote count are generally 48 to 52. The Electoral College has its own purpose, and it is really a talk for another time. I think it's brilliant the way the founders set that up.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, the main point is that this is a state matter, okay? And so the states that are really invoked here are Texas, California, maybe Florida, because they've got some room to further gerrymander. They're already gerrymandered toward Republicans, but it gets redder and redder. And so if they were to jump in, they could make a difference. So this is about gerrymandering, changing the rules, with the politicians picking the voters instead of the voters picking the politicians, as some people put it.
Which is what's been going on now. I mean, this is not something that's new.
Oh, it's 200 years old.
Yeah. So for purposes of this discussion, let's talk a little bit about, let's assume for purposes of discussion that Texas does gerrymander five more seats for Republicans.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, in order for Democrats to take over the House, they need to win 9 seats
in the next election.
Right. And that is a much more difficult task in this environment than winning 4 seats.
And that's why there's all this heaving right now, because it really can be significant.
Yes, absolutely. So now, Mike, you did some other research, and that was on. I think the next one you want to go to is the states that benefit the most currently from the counting of illegal immigrants.
Illegal immigrants.
Okay.
So there's about 10 or 11 million of them in the country. I think California has 2.6, and Texas has 2.06.
Okay.
Okay, so almost the same. They're pretty close, but they kind of offset. What's the third state? Florida.
Okay.
Okay. Now the apportionment is the name that's used in the Constitution, in the law. How the federal funding and how federal seats are allocated is based on residents in the census.
Okay.
Trump wants to do a new census before 2030 that would not include all of the illegal immigrants. Okay, because a lot of them are concentrated in California. Okay.
Now I'm going to. I know that for the 2020 census, Trump told, I believe it was Wilbur Ross at the time. I believe that he oversaw the department that would oversee the census. Told him, do not count illegal immigrants. There was a lawsuit, and the Supreme Court gave a technical reason, if my memory is correct, a technical reason why Wilbur Ross couldn't change the rules in the middle of the game, and that if they were going to not count illegal immigrants, they couldn't do it the way that Trump was wanting it done.
Yeah, I think it might have had to do
late.
with Congress, because the Constitution gives Congress authority on a lot of this. They can overrule some of the state things, for instance. We said it's a state matter. Congress can overrule in certain cases. I think that was it. But for some reason, it was about process.
It was a process decision. And but Trump has recently called for another census, as you point out,
yes,
to be counted now, not in 2030, but to be counted now.
And the point of this analysis, the conclusion of it, is it doesn't produce much difference. Okay? In the net of it, I've got a list here of all 10, the top 10 states that would be affected. You know, there's a grand total of 11 million in there, and if all of them were corrected for illegal immigrants, it would make a change of about 1 or 2 seats.
Okay.
Okay. So it's a nothing burger.
Okay.
Okay. Now here's the way to look at it: 11 million change in population out of a 330 million country is tiny.
Well, but let's also say this: it does affect federal funding pretty significantly because it is still 3% of the population. So you're saying it's nothing because it's balanced.
Yeah.
And I agree with that from a political standpoint, but from an economic standpoint.
Well, it's a lot of money because the government is so large. What I'm saying is proportionally, it's not that big.
I agree.
So then the next one, this is really interesting. This is the elephant in the room, is that internal migration from blue states to red states will be represented in the next census.
Yes.
That is 10 seats.
Yes, and that census is the one that if Trump gets what he wants, and that is a new census done
before 2030.
Before 2028.
Yeah, before 2030 is when the next one typically would be done. Whenever it's done, it would advance this shift that's already going on. This is based on 2024 data.
Okay.
Okay, now think about what happens if Mamdani wins in New York. You know, if California continues to wallow in the wake of the fires and their governance problems out there, there's a lot of people leaving California, as you can see in this map, for those who have the visuals.
Okay.
California will lose the most seats of all the states. They'll lose 3 seats as of 2024 data.
Let me ask you a question. Is the loss of 3 for California just the immigration from California, or does that include not counting illegal immigrants?
I don't know how they dealt with illegal immigrants in this particular count.
Okay, all right.
But it's based on net migration to
whatever
other
it is,
states.
it's the same across all the states, though.
I think so. Yeah.
So Texas is going to pick up 4.
And Florida pick up 4.
4, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big red shift. And New York and California are the major donors of those seats, plus Illinois, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, all blue states. They're going to lose big in the next census. So that's not being talked about right now, but if they advance the census earlier than 2030, the effect of that then will hit
in 2028.
In 2028, which is a big deal.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the other piece that's not really being that the gerrymandering is part of this, but not the big part that you're saying.
Yeah.
So Trump has called for another census to be done.
Yes.
He has called for that census to not include illegal immigrants, but your analysis says that even if illegal immigrants are included, that part doesn't change this map very much.
I think so.
And because California would get to count about as many illegal immigrants as Texas. Now, the other thing that's interesting, I read the other day where there have been, I think it's 2 million illegal immigrants who have self-deported.
Yeah.
And so they obviously won't be counted even if illegal immigrants are counted. They won't be counted if another census is done over sometime the next 12 months.
So we're relying on other people to collect this data. You know, we're not statisticians. So I think we don't know all of the internal decisions that they make about how do they recognize out-migration. I just know this is as of 24, and it's continuing, if not accelerating, given what's about to happen. I mean, Chicago is nearly bankrupt. Okay.
Yes.
New York is about to elect a socialist mayor. We see it in Tennessee. You know, Chicago guy came and wanted to buy my house a couple of years ago. Fed up with Chicago. So it's real, and I think it's going to be bigger than what we see here on this this map.
I
new
agree.
census.
I agree that this is a trend that started pretty heavily about 10 or 12 years ago, and that I think it's accelerating, because what's so fascinating to me, Mike, and I can't explain it, is the blue states are getting bluer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their policies, the fact that people are leaving their states, and these are the most productive people, are leaving their states, it hasn't changed the politicians' views on how to govern.
Right.
In fact, they're even raising taxes more, increasing regulations. Their social policies are very anti-family, and so it's fascinating to me that the politicians seem to not care. It's kind of like when Ken Griffin left Chicago, he was the single biggest taxpayer in the state of Illinois, and I mean nobody came close to being second. And his firm, the people in his firm, in the aggregate, they paid over $1 billion in taxes to the state of Illinois. J.D. Pritzker's response when he left was
Governor of Illinois.
Yes, the governor was good riddance.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, here's a person who's contributing more than anybody else in your entire state, and your answer when he leaves is good riddance. It's kind of like the way New York treated Rush Limbaugh when he left for Florida.
Right.
They said, "We're glad you're gone."
Right.
Okay. There's a lot.
Well,
he was paying a lot of taxes.
You have people that are, say, center right that are leaving, just get fed up and they become residents of a red state.
Yeah.
It just leaves a bluer concentration behind.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And also there's confirmation bias, just the human psyche. It's unlikely for people to say, Crum, you're right. I've been wrong these 40 years.
Yeah.
And we're now going to do it your way. They're just not going to do that.
They're not, and they are not, and unless they get replaced by people who do have a different way of wanting to govern.
Right.
And that's what's going to be interesting in these congressional races is, so let's switch gears if we could.
Okay.
Let's go to the big, beautiful bill.
Yes.
And the most important thing to me about the big, beautiful bill, setting aside the policy parts, is the fact that the big, beautiful bill was passed 100% on a partisan basis.
Yes.
Meaning there wasn't a single Democrat who voted for the big, beautiful bill, which you could then argue means they were against what was in the big, beautiful bill because they voted against it.
Makes the analysis clear.
Makes it clear.
But
And
let me ask you this. Before we go on, there's one point that I did not make. It's
please.
very interesting. We talk about gerrymandering in terms of district lines. That's really what it is. It's drawing lines on a map, right? There is another way of contorting votes, which is in time. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal this past week that says Illinois changed its rules in 1872 to have in off-year elections, the mayoral elections are in February. February in Chicago is not a pleasant time to go out and vote.
Right.
Okay. In the presidential years, it's in November. Right. That's when they have the elections for everything. And so in the off years, they have it in February. Why would they do that? Well, the explanation in this article is that it was anti-immigrant. It was nativist. It was they have low turnout in February. And so the people that turn out are the ones that are really motivated, that really have something at stake. And so at the time, it was nativist versus immigrants. Now it has become unions.
Yeah, government employee unions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's all kinds of unions. There's pipe fitters and, all kinds of unions in Chicago. And so they turn out reliably.
Yes.
And so that gives them an advantage. It's almost like changing the boundaries, right, to limit your opponent's vote. You just do it at a really crappy time to be outside, and marginal voters drop away.
Well, in Nashville, we have our mayoral, ours are in the summertime. And our turnout for the mayor's election, the general election for mayor, tends to be about a third of what the turnout is for a presidential election.
Yes.
So it's only so
similar,
very similar.
Yeah.
And I think that in Tennessee, the state legislature could require that the mayor's race, at least the mayor's race, be done at the same time as the congressional races. I think they could do that.
Yeah.
And I wish they would, because I think it's important. The more people who vote, the wider appeal politicians have to be wider in their appeal. in Chicago, the teachers union picks the Democrat nominee and has for many, many elections.
So the U.S. Constitution says that the states shall determine the manner and process of elections. The time, manner and time, I think, are two of the words that they use. So we've talked about drawing congressional districts. We've talked about the timing of elections. These are up to states, and it's legal to have this. What I see as the interesting dilemma here is that if you start to use the federal government to cure these little distortions, Nashville's mayoral election in the summer, Chicago's election in February, they're kind of gross. They're unfair. They are partisan. They are rigging the game in your favor. But if you start to have the federal government come in and say, no, you can't do that, then you have a centrally organized and directed.
That would be bad. And that's where, frankly, the news media is supposed to shine a light on these types of things to bring attention to it. Right. And the news media fails to do that.
Yes.
They do.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, they're very, very inconsistent in the way they apply their own set of principles and values. So regularly, the mainstream media will say it's very important that everybody vote. It's very important that everybody vote. And then our local mainstream media does not shine a light on the fact that our mayor's race is set at a time of the year where we have very, very low voter turnout. And then they don't call for the state legislature moving it to November. They don't do that.
So our duty here From Our Generation is to bring to our listeners' attention the things that the media is hiding from them.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I wanted to do that before we got beyond gerrymandering. So we were on to the big, beautiful bill. Have at it.
Yeah. Now, the big, beautiful bill was completely partisan. So therefore, if things go well, Republicans can claim that they're the ones who were behind the good policies, and they can blame Democrats for not supporting them.
So you mean if the economy thrives?
If the economy does well, then Republicans should justly be able to claim credit and also criticize Democrats for opposing it.
Uniformly, universally.
Yes.
All of them voted against it.
Yes. And likewise, if the economy does not do well, then Democrats will be able to point their fingers at Republicans and say, "See there, we voted against that big beautiful bill because we knew it would be bad." So let's take a look at the main things in the big beautiful bill, and I'm going to include the reconciliation bill. I think that's what it was called, where there was like a rescission bill. The rescission bill where there was like $10 billion, where the Trump administration went to Congress and said, "Here's $10 billion that's been previously appropriated. I want you to take it back." And that also passed on a party line vote.
Shortly after the big, beautiful bill.
Yes.
So these are two legislations, but together we're talking about the effect.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the effect of those together.
The effect of both together. And so the big, beautiful bill, what it did was it made permanent the 2017 tax cuts. That doesn't change anything in anybody's pocketbook, but what it does do for business is it took off the table the risk of it expiring at the end of this year.
Of the tax cut expiring, meaning the taxes would go up.
Meaning taxes would have gone up. So now the tax cuts of 2017 are now permanent unless they are changed by future legislation.
Yes. Let me say something about the semantics of tax cuts, because often the government builds in automatic increases, or in this case, an increase that's going to happen in 2026. In 2017, they sunsetted. Right. And so they call it a tax increase, right, and a tax cut. But these are semantic, strange constructions, because nothing is going up from now, but it's a cut from what the law would have been if it were allowed to stay in place.
Right.
And this has been going on for decades, where the left, who likes increasing taxes, will say an effort to reduce the growth in taxes is a cut, is a tax cut.
Right.
Taxes are still going up, just less quickly.
Yeah, and they particularly do that on spending. If spending is growing at 5% and Republicans vote to increase it at 3%, Democrats and the media call that a cut, even though it still is higher the next year than the prior year. Yeah. It's not as high as Democrats would like. But let's go back to the big, beautiful bill. Yeah. So in addition to extending the 2017 or making it permanent, actually, in addition to doing that, it says no taxes on tips up to, I believe, $25,000 worth of tips, no taxes on overtime, up to some amount, or maybe it's maybe there's some dollar. It captures virtually everybody who works for overtime, and then no taxes on Social Security for about 90% of Social Security beneficiaries.
So how many people are involved here?
That's over 60.
Affected?
That's over 60 million people when you count all three together. It's over 60 million, and there's no overlap. That's what's so interesting, is that people who get tips don't get overtime, and Social Security people don't get overtime; they don't get tips. And so if you look at each one of those groups individually, the number of people who work for tips is somewhere around 6 to 7 million people. The number of people who receive overtime is 6 to 7 million people. The number of people who will benefit from the Social Security cut is over 50 million. And so these are people who will now have more money in their pockets, and it will be because Republicans voted and Democrats opposed.
So this is over 60 million people, and the electorate in a presidential election is about 100. It's 77 plus 75, about 150 million. 150,
160, yeah. So this is a large number.
Presuming most of those people are voters. We don't know that number, but it's a third to maybe a quarter probably of the electorate is getting this. And
then it's whether or not they realize that they attribute their increase in take-home pay to Republicans. Now, and not to Democrats, and it'll be up to the Republicans to make that case. But there are other things in the big beautiful bill that will be very good in terms of driving productivity, and productivity at its base is the key to increasing real wages. You must have an increase in productivity to increase real wages. Otherwise, you're just moving inflationary dollars around. Because here's what the big beautiful bill does. It says to businesses that buy capital equipment between and install it and pay for it between now and the end of 2028. So that's a pretty short time horizon.
Mm-hmm.
That if you do that, you can depreciate the cost of those capital goods 100% in the year that you buy them. Now, from a cash flow standpoint, what that means is instead of having to depreciate, instead of buying a $10 million piece of equipment, and you have to put out the cash of $10 million. Under the old rules, you had to then take an expense for that in $2 million increments over each of the next 5 years, which meant that for tax purposes, you couldn't write off all $10 million, even though you spent all $10 million. That's just the way the tax code works.
And that's called depreciation.
That's called depreciation. And so now what they're doing is they're saying you can depreciate 100% in 1 year, which is tremendous from a cash flow standpoint. Now, but here's what's most interesting about that. The equipment that they buy will be the newest, most productive equipment on the planet because it's brand new. And they're not going to buy, and they're buying equipment that they need. And then this will make the people who operate that equipment more productive. And so that will drive, in my opinion, that will drive real wages higher. Then you also have, as you've used, AI is also going to drive real wages higher. Now, the other thing that AI is going to do is it's going to eliminate a number of jobs because AI will be doing 10 people can
knowledge
do the
work.
10 people can do the work of 100 people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very important that the economy be growing in general so that the people who are being displaced by AI can find gainful employment and good jobs in where there is new demand.
So the way I look at this is that, robots have revolutionized blue-collar work. And a blue-collar worker that can run a robot is way more productive than one without.
Right.
And they make more money.
Yes.
And it's going to be similar for white-collar workers now. If you know how to use AI, you're way more productive and worth more.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, watch out.
Yes, but all of these things that are in the big, beautiful bill, all of those things, plus the other thing that's not in the bill per se, but Trump is doing, is the Trump administration is cutting regulations. Their goal is to cut regulations by 50% during his term, his time in office here. and regulations are expensive. Meaning, in order to comply with regulations, you have to hire people and you have to pay them to comply with regulations. And if the regulations are a waste of money, you still have to comply. And so what Trump is doing is he's dramatically cutting the regulatory part of our national government. And the
administrative burden it imposes on businesses.
Yes. And so that'll be another productivity gain. And so my prediction is that around the fourth quarter of this year, you'll begin to see the plans for new factories. It takes time to design new factories, to get them permitted, and to construct them. I'm guessing it takes somewhere between a year and 18 months to construct them. It probably takes somewhere between 6 months and a year to design them and permit them. So I'm expecting that by the fourth quarter or the first quarter of next year, I'm expecting to see significant employment in the construction of new factories.
Yes.
And then toward the
shovel-ready jobs, they once called them.
Yeah. And toward the end of next year, you're going to see, I think, a boom in capital spending, because you'll then see the first wave of new equipment going into the new factories. Now, what's going to be very interesting is that when you're locating a factory, you're going to businesses will locate those factories in states that want them, and that are business friendly.
Meaning they don't tax them heavily and they don't regulate them heavily.
And they don't make the permitting so difficult that it would take them 2 years to permit.
Right.
And so the blue states, I think, will not benefit nearly as much
right.
as the red states if the red states remain business friendly. And so,
do you remember when Amazon was choosing its headquarters and they chose New York and Washington, the Northern Virginia area?
Yeah.
I think so. The two headquarters. The New York one was canceled within months because they basically said you're not welcome here.
Right.
They didn't even let the thing play out. They just said, don't come.
Right. And Nashville had been selected as a third location, but Nashville is the location that ended up getting the greatest amount of the employees that were planned for New York.
Yes.
And so here in an area called Nashville Yards, Amazon has a huge presence.
Yes.
In there, and they're still adding people.
Right.
And it's all in the logistics area. And so anyway, so this is where the big beautiful bill is going to have an impact on the next election, depending on the effects of the big beautiful bill, which some of the effects will certainly we will see the effects of the front end of it.
Yes.
Now, the other thing that's interesting is what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. And they're unrelated, except they are tied together politically. Because what Trump has said is that Washington, D.C., and I think what tipped the scales there was when the consultant whose nickname was Big Balls was beaten up. He was out with his girlfriend, and some teenagers were kind of assaulting her or roughing her up or just being nasty to her, whatever. And Big Balls tried to stop them, and they beat him up badly. Mm-hmm. He ended up with a concussion. I don't know if he had any broken bones, but his face was badly bloodied, maybe a broken nose. He was beaten up badly, and I think Trump, that finally is the straw that broke the camel's back, because the city seems so disinterested.
Yes.
In solving that crime.
Yeah.
And so Trump has said, "I'm the heck with it." So he has stepped in because he has 30 days that he can do it, and he has announced that he's now going to go before Congress and ask Congress to extend the time of federalizing Washington, D.C., which he has the right to do that for that particular city. That's in the law. And so he has the right to do that. And so he's going to ask Congress to extend that. And so now the question is going to be, do Democrats oppose Trump's desire and his efforts to reduce crime in Washington, D.C.? And according to Schumer, every single Democrat will oppose Trump. Every single Democrat will oppose Trump. So if we have another partisan bill that is passed, the Democrats are going to have to explain why it is that they are voting against reducing crime. And I think that's going to be a tough one because in Washington, this is the part that's interesting to me. In Washington, D.C., the percentage of black residents in Washington who are in favor of a larger police presence is absolutely huge. It's over 80% of the black residents who like the idea of more police and less crime because they're the ones who are affected the most. And so the black and Hispanic constituency is a constituency that the Democrats feel like, well, the black constituency, they feel like they own them. And yet when it comes time to step up and help them, they seem to be unwilling to do it just because Trump wants to. And so I think the politics of what's going on in Washington, D.C. will be interesting to see because I do think Trump will be very successful. This morning as I was driving in, I heard that he has now, Pam Bondi has now appointed a police commissioner or a person who will oversee and become the acting police commissioner during the time that the Trump administration is overseeing the police and the safety of people in Washington, which means that now, for example, police will be required to cooperate with ICE because now the acting commissioner is going to tell the police this is what you're going to do. So I think it's going to be just fascinating to see what happens because I expect crime in Washington over the next few months to drop precipitously. And I also expect Democrats to oppose Republican efforts to reduce crime.
You know, the District of Columbia was set up as a federal district, a place for the federal government to go. It was a marsh. It was nowhere when they first set it up, and it wasn't a state, right? And so it's grown now so much. The federal government has grown. There's been so much increase in the population of Washington, D.C.
I'm going to push back on that. The population has grown into Maryland and Virginia.
Sure.
But not the population of Washington, D.C. itself is still only a few 100,000.
It's a very tiny area.
Very tiny area.
It's highly urbanized. There's a lot of people there. The point I'm making is that it's a small place that was governed by the Congress.
Correct.
In my living memory, I remember them having legislation about rules about Congress. Now they have a mayor and they have more independence. The left wants it to become a state.
Mm-hmm.
And James Carville more recently has said, you know, if we're going this direction with all of these gerrymander changes, let's just get the Democrats elected and get D.C. a state, Puerto Rico a state, expand the Supreme Court, and I think something else.
Right.
You know, it's kind of their nuclear option.
Right.
So my thinking about D.C. is that it's another example of where the public sector governance is just inadequate. It's just not working. And so Trump is taking it over, and this raises the issue of the scope of executive authority. You know, how many things can he take over? This is, I think, where I think the pushback is going to come from him. He's taken over the Kennedy Center. You know, he's reorienting elections.
He has the authority.
This is the debate. What does the authority he have to do? And the left thinks he doesn't have much, that he's a dictator, an autocrat, and we're losing our democracy.
Well, they say that.
Yeah.
But previous presidents, Trump is the first one to change, for example, the Smithsonian Institute in any meaningful way. He's the first one to change the makeup of the Kennedy Center board in any meaningful way.
Right.
But presidents have always had that authority. Mm-hmm. They've always had the authority to pick the board, but they've never really exercised it. They've kind of left it to a local hoity-toity folks in Washington D.C. And so Trump is now saying, the heck with this. If the Smithsonian is going to talk about slavery, then they're going to explain that the Democrat Party controlled the South, which it did.
Yeah.
And Democrats don't like the fact that the Democrat Party was the party of slavery. I think it will probably explain that the Democrat Party was the party that passed all of the Jim Crow laws. Yeah. All of them. So when Democrats claim that Republicans want to pass Jim Crow 2.0, well, they're the ones who passed Jim Crow 1.0. They ought to own that. They ought to explain that, why they did that. Yeah. And then they say, well, that was, but that was a long time ago. Say, all right, well, then why do you keep black children? Why do you force them into very poorly run and poorly performing government-run schools. Why do you do that? Because that's the same thing. You're just precipitating the same things against black people now that you were doing 200 years ago.
Right.
And so don't claim that you've changed. It's just a different issue. But your way of approaching it is exactly the same. And so the Smithsonian will not be allowed to give kind of a woke interpretation, for lack of a better term, a woke interpretation of history. And just like PBS, I think it was either PBS or NPR, they had like 75 reporters, and every single one of them was a Democrat, and they claimed to be unbiased. They made that claim. Well, you can't. The logic isn't there.
Well,
and so
it's similar in universities. You have 95% people who are vote for the left, and they claim that diversity is one of their great attributes.
Yeah, and then their definition of diversity is what people look like. Yeah. It's not what they think, how they think, and how they teach. So at any rate, we're getting off point here. But the big beautiful bill is now passed. There's going to be a budget that will pass at the end of September, and it will be the budget for 2026. I don't know. There's been very little in the news about what will be included in that bill, but my guess is that bill will tighten up more spending in the non-entitlement area of government, and it may increase the requirements. For example, one of the things in Medicaid that all states are required by law to do is revalidate that a person's eligibility to be on Medicaid once a year.
Yes.
The average across the country apparently was 38% compliance. 38%. And so there are probably lots and lots of people who are on Medicaid. In fact, I heard that there are hundreds of thousands of people who have $1 million of assets who are on Medicaid. And that's, you're not supposed to have more than it's like $10,000. And so I think there will be, and so the question is, if a millionaire is taken off of Medicaid, is that a cut in benefits? Democrats will claim it's a cut,
right?
And Republicans will claim, well, they were never entitled to be there, or they no longer are entitled to be there, because Medicaid is supposed to help people who need help,
right? Not
help people who simply want their health care paid for by somebody else,
right? And the big beautiful bill did a lot to address that, or have a work requirement to qualify for Medicare, or Medicaid. So here's another interesting point: is a lot of the opposition to the big beautiful bill on the right was because it did not cut spending enough,
right?
And I think the political calculation was they couldn't do all this at once.
Correct.
They get the tax cuts in place, set up some charter schools, the other things that we're talking about here, but don't try to control the deficit in this because it's too much at once.
Right.
So what I think you're saying, and I agree with, is that the layers to come are going to now start addressing spending.
The next bill is the annual budget, and there's been very little news about it, but I expect there to be some significant spending cuts, or I think there'll be some reallocation of money to promote, say, charter schools, because charter schools now, there's plenty of evidence now that charter schools benefit at-risk children more than government-run schools. Now, there might even be some push to expand universal vouchers or universal scholarships, like what just happened in Tennessee. There might be that. I don't know. But the next thing that we'll be looking for at the federal level is, and we'll see a lot of news in September when they come back from the August break, which I think is next week. Congress comes back into session. There'll be the committees that are working on next year's budget have been working, and so there'll be a lot that comes out in the news in September.
Well, it's been like 25 years since the Congress passed an orderly budget with committees doing their work and doing line items. As I think there's 8 or 9 or 10 major categories of spending. Each one is supposed to be debated and in committee and then brought to the floor. and they basically have punted on that and done a continuing resolution.
Yeah, they've called that regular. They've called that regular order.
Yes,
and it's very hard to have regular order if the party that controls the House doesn't also control the presidency, because the president has to submit a budget, and then the House doesn't. The House can then do whatever they want to with the submission of the budget. So Trump submitted a budget back in, I guess, March or April, because that's when you're supposed to do it. And then the House then has committees, as you say, all these different committees that then review it. But this, I think there will actually be a budget that is produced from what is called regular order this year. And then the Senate, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure, I believe that it only takes a majority in the Senate to pass an annual budget, not 60.
Yeah.
But I do think it will take 60 votes
in
the Senate to extend federal jurisdiction in Washington, D.C. So that's what will be interesting. And if it doesn't pass, it'll be interesting to see if they add that to the budget.
I think you've said earlier to me off mic that this federal takeover of Washington can happen for 30 days, and then it has to be extended by Congress?
Has to be extended by Congress after 30 days.
Okay.
And so that'll be, I think we're 6 or 7 days into it now. So it'll be the beginning of September, right after they get back. Be around the 5th of September that the Congress will have to extend it. It'll come back. It'll be put up. And it'll be fascinating to see politically whether or not Democrats will, because there'll be data that shows the amount of crime that's been committed during that 30-day period, and I'm guessing that the amount of crime, especially in the low-income areas, will be significantly lower, because that's where the 800 National Guard troops are stationed, and they are a formidable force. And throwing Subway sandwiches at them is not going to be the way to. Apparently, some employee of the Justice Department was screaming at one of them and got mad and threw a Subway sandwich or something that looked like a Subway sandwich. And Jeanine Pirro is indicting him for assault of a federal officer. And
she's what, the now assistant attorney general or something for D.C.?
Yeah, she said this was an assault. And he will be indicted, and he will be prosecuted. And Pam Bondi's already fired him because he was apparently he was a lawyer in the Justice Department, so he's been fired. So
he threw a sandwich at who?
At a National Guard. You can look it up. It's
okay.
He's yelling at him, and then he just all of a sudden he's holding a Subway sandwich all wrapped up, and apparently he just loses his temper and just hauls off and throws it, hits him right in the chest. Well, I mean, it's not going to hurt him.
Right.
But then he turns around and runs, and National Guard people chase him down. And now he's going to pay a price for he's going to be held accountable.
Yeah.
I
remember seeing standoffs where, protesters would spit on the police.
Can't do that anymore either.
Yeah.
You do that, you will be arrested.
Right.
Yeah, you will be arrested. Well, Mike, I think we have covered the issue of gerrymandering. We'll be watching that as it goes on in the next few days. We covered the census. We've covered the effects of illegal immigration on the census. I appreciate your work in doing that, and we'll reconvene next week. And what do we want to? There was a subject that you thought that would be great to talk about.
Yeah, a couple of times in this podcast we've talked about public versus private.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Affairs, and Washington is one. Washington D.C. is this how much of the public sector should be in control of things like grocery stores. This is current in New York. You've mentioned, I think, Kansas.
In Kansas City, about 5 years ago, the city opened up a really beautiful grocery store. It lost $29 million in 5 years, and it closed this past week. It's closed within the last week, and it's an amazing feat for one store to lose $29 million in 5 years. But it demonstrates, and we can discuss, why did that grocery store lose so much money if it wasn't there to make a profit?
Well, and we've seen the government take over student loans because it was going to save us money.
The government has taken over much of healthcare payments
because it was going to save us money.
Yeah, and let's talk about that next week. And so I look forward to that. So
Okay,
thanks
great.
a lot.
All right.